So, as she has given a brief introduction about me, so right now, so presently working as professor and head at College of Agriculture, Kalburgi. So that is coming under University of Agricultural Sciences, Raichur. So earlier to my teaching experience, I served as an agronomist in ASRP Chickpea for about 9 years. So worked on different agronomic aspects. So then upon my promotion to senior scientist, so they have been shifted me from ASRP Chickpea to ASRP Pigeon Pea. So there I worked about 6 years. So total service in research wing is about 15 years, and for the last 2 years I'm working in teaching. So apart from the Zonal Agricultural Research Station and Krishi Vijnana Kendra at Kalburgi, we have also a newly established college. So the college was started during the year 2011. So till date around six batches. So 6 batch of students. So they graduated from our college. So and some of the projects, okay, so wherein I have been associated with them is, so since from the joining of the University of Agricultural Sciences, Dharwad. So earlier it was so Dharwad University only. So upon the bifurcation of the Raichur, so actually the place Kalburgi, which was again right now coming under University of Agricultural Sciences, Raichur. So I handled many projects. So as he shared in the beginning, so Rabi Pigeon Pea project. So that is introduction of the pigeon pea. So its cultivation aspects even during the Rabi season. So how best we can exploit the pigeon pea cultivation during the Rabi season also. So because every one of us know so very well how this climate is changing at a rapid rate, and how best we can modify our cropping patterns or the cropping systems under changing climatic conditions. And later on I also worked on the precision farming techniques in different field crops. So the major crop wherein I am working is the pigeon pea and chickpea. So there also, so we have given recommendation of the precision farming techniques. So in order to overcome the seasonal variability with respect to the nutrients, and how best we can manage the pest and diseases based on the variable rate application concept. So later on, I also worked on the integrated farming system models for zone 2. So for both irrigated ecosystems and rain-fed ecosystems, and we have formulated the different IFS models both for rain-fed and irrigated. And recently from the 2018-19 to so since last 2022, so I was also associated with this state government funded mega project, so zero budget natural farming project. Now it so it has been renamed as only the natural farming so project. So I will share my experience with so the natural farming aspects. So I have worked in about 12 to 13 different crops of our region. Okay, so again the zone 2. So it is having a diversified crops and cropping systems. So consisting from a very high water and nutrient required crops like paddy, sugarcane and cotton to so a very low nutrient and water required crops like the oilseed and pulses. So this is the brief so the work so what I have done during my so 17 years of service. So again so the last lecture is almost 2 hours and more, I think. Okay, so again I don't want you to so take your precious time. So I will just stick on to my topic only. Okay, so how best we can correlate or relate this crop diversification to the natural farming concept. Okay, so natural farming, as you all know, it is not at all a new concept. So when the agriculture was started, so everywhere, okay, so our farmers, they used to practice the natural or the organic farming practices. Okay, so due to climate change and so due to the sudden increase in the population, okay, so in order to meet out the food requirement, so we actually switched over to different chemical based or other farming practices. And because of those faulty agronomic practices, so we have ended up in a situation wherein we cannot divert back those so precious natural resource to its virgin state as original state. Okay, so that was the fate. Okay, so created due to the faulty or so mismanagement practices, I can say, right? So coming to the topic directly, so diversification, as you all know, so it is nothing but, so we have to go for cultivation of more crops. Okay, so on the same piece of land. Okay, so as such, so right now, so there is no scope at all for the horizontal expansion, isn't it? Okay, so because of the fragmented land holdings, as well as so because of other reasons also, so whatever you want to increase, okay, so whatever the management practices you employ, so towards achieving the sustainability or productivity of any crops on a global basis, so that productivity increase should come only through the vertical diversification. Okay, so vertical diversification plays very important role rather than this horizontal diversification or expansion. I will come to that point. Okay, so what is horizontal diversification, vertical diversification, and other means to increase the productivity and sustainability, right? So let us have some data. Okay, so what is the present situation of the agriculture? Okay, so on a global basis as well as so in India. Okay, so as a whole, so this is so one prediction. Okay, so made by this organization, Food and Agriculture Organization. So by 2050, okay, so the total global population will increase so to 30%. Okay, so just to meet out the 30% of the population of the world, so we need to increase the food grain production to 70%. Okay, and this additional 70% of the total food grain production should again come from a shrinking land resources. Okay, so this is very, very important, and to achieve this, so within a short span of time, okay, so it is so in hands of everyone. Okay, so we have to follow so all the good agricultural practices in such a way that so that should not hamper our precious resource base, it should not degrade environment, and at the same time, so we should able to achieve the higher production level, so within the limited resources, right? And again, so as a globe whole, and coming to our own situation, Indian context. Okay, so right now also we have the most populated country in the world, and by 2030 also. Okay, so they have again predicted the population may reach around so 1.51 billion. Okay, so right now we have around 1.4 billion population. So there was around 15 to 20% increase in the population level, and just to feed this much of the population. Okay, so again India would be one of the populous country in next so 7 or 8 years. So for feeding this much of increased population, again, so we need to increase our total food grain production, and while increasing the food grain production, again we have to be very cautious. Okay, so one should not again follow some of the faulty practices. Okay, so what I mean to say here is, so without testing, okay, so any practices or system or the method, okay, so on multi locations on a large scale, so one should not recommend or apply so for any crops in any region. Okay, so every one of us are talking, so the natural farming practices are zero budget natural farming or paramparagat krushi, then organic farming, right? So those are again so looks so sound, so only theoretically. So if you just go it by practical means, right, so this is very, very difficult. Okay, so you can employ it, but so on practical scale it is bit difficult to get the higher productivity level. Okay, so that is the most important. So here again so before following, okay, so any practices without its testing on a multi locations, so we have to test it on a so larger scale. Okay, So again, any faulty practices, okay, so that again threatens the food security as well as the nutritional security, okay. So not only the food security, the total nutritional security will also be get hampered due to the faulty management practices. So the story behind the green revolution technologies and how it has been introduced in your country, and what is the status of the food grain production of India immediately after the independence, okay. So even though this green revolution technology has helped us a lot in achieving the higher food grain production just to feed our population at that time, and you know it very well, so we are actually in a state of the begging bowl, isn't it, okay. So immediately after green revolution, so we achieved a status of the self-sufficiency in the food grain production, okay. So even though this green revolution technology helped us a lot in achieving the very huge or higher food grain production, but at the same time, so it left behind many adverse impact, so especially on the environment and other precious resources, okay. So still today, so we are actually so not in a position to bring back those almost polluted so resources in the original state, okay. So these are the adverse impact, okay, so created so due to the green revolution technologies, okay. So soil degradation, you just look this data, okay. So this one, so soil degradation, so the ideal, so maybe here in this group many of you are from soil science or agronomy, the ideal NPK ratio, okay, so for any type of the soil, for any crops, okay, so it should be in a ratio of 4:2:1, right. So NPK, and you just see the data of this state Punjab, okay, so where they have reached almost 31 or 32:8:1, 32:8:1. So actually the balanced or ideal NPK ratio is only 4:2:1, right. So that much of the increased nitrogenous fertilizers, okay. So you just imagine, so what kind of the threats you are going to get from such a huge usage of the chemical fertilizers, especially the nitrogenous fertilizers, okay. So as a result of the indiscriminate use of the fertilizers, especially the nitrogenous so fertilizers, so they again created lot of problems, so through this eutrophication, okay. So that is the deposition of the nitrates, okay, so both in water bodies as well as in the soil. And you just imagine, so if you consume the any crop so produced from such a polluted soil and water, okay, so you imagine the health condition, okay. So this eutrophication is very much dangerous, especially for the infants, okay, so children's below so 5 years age. So sometimes due to the excess deposition of the nitrogen and the phosphatic fertilizers, okay, so in water bodies as well as in soil, so leads to this particular problem, and methanoglobemia theater, okay, so blue baby syndrome or eutrophication, right. And again because of the dominance of only two crops, rice and wheat, okay, so there is a loss of the biodiversity, okay, so genetic diversity, so you can say in other words the genetic diversity is actually narrowed down. So how best we can correlate, okay, so this natural farming practices in today's context. So I think this is 5th day of your this one, isn't it, okay. So again I don't want to go in detail about so what is this natural farming, what are its components, so what are the principles, so what are the ingredients or the materials used to supplement so the nutrients as well as the plant protection chemicals, okay. So many of the resource persons, they might have already explained so this particular aspect, okay. So this natural farming in present day context, okay, so especially in the Indian context, it refers to the complete elimination or exclusion of the agrochemicals, okay. So as far as possible, the farmer should invariably use the low cost so readily available local resources, okay. So especially the cow based so byproducts in order to supplement the nutrients in the form of the Bijamrita, Jivamrita or Ghana Jivamrita. And just to tackle the problem of pest and diseases, so you need to just prepare the different formulations in the form of astras. Okay, so Nimastra, Agniastra, Brahmastra, any type of the botanicals. Okay, so that is the main concept of this natural farming. So apart from this, so one more important aspect, or you can say the principle is, so we have to go for the diversification or cultivation of many crops in order to tackle this particular problem. Okay, so if at all you want to achieve the sustainability in agriculture, so it is not at all possible for you to achieve this one only if you follow the monocropping, or so if you cultivate only 1 or 2 crops. Okay, so crop diversification is one of the most important principle. Okay, so this natural farming concept can sustain only if you diversify the different crops and cropping system under this natural farming conditions, right? And one more important aim of this natural farming is just to reduce the total cost of cultivation. Okay, so required to raise any crops. Okay, so through the way of avoiding the purchase of costly agricultural inputs. Okay, so especially the agro inputs, so especially chemicals. Okay, so it may be the seed dressing chemicals, or the chemical fertilizers, or the plant protection chemicals. Okay, so as far as possible, so we have to prepare all these on the farm itself from the readily available resources from the farm itself. Okay, so that is one more important component. Okay, so that is, so we have to reduce the cost of cultivation. Even though if you are getting very low yield of any crops under natural farming systems, no problem for you. Okay, so if you are getting, or if you are reducing the total cost, so that you can going to compensate. Okay, so the yield reduction or the loss of yield. So among the several principles, okay, so that are being followed under natural farming systems across the states in our country. Okay, so why our neighbor state Andhra Pradesh? Okay, so the earlier Andhra Pradesh, now it has been again bifurcated into Telangana and Andhra Pradesh. So there they could able to achieve the higher yield levels in different crops, right? So under natural farming systems by following these 9 well defined principles. Okay, so these are the universally accepted natural farming principles followed at Andhra Pradesh in majority of the crops, even though they have practiced the natural farming practices. So their report suggests that. Okay, so NARM, so Hyderabad. So if you just go to the website of NARM and open the report, okay, so it is having around 126 pages. So there they have mentioned, so there is no yield advantage at all under natural farmings in almost all the crops tested in that state except this finger millet. Okay, so but they are getting the monetary benefit through way of cutting down the production cost, as well as, so once they produce the crop, okay, so their one more income, okay, so is through the vertical diversification. Okay, so that means, so they are going to add, okay, so the value addition to the crop. Okay, so through the packaging, right, so through milling or through process technology, whatever the produce they are going to get under natural or organic farming this one practices, so they are all going to follow all these improved value addition practices. As a result, even though they are getting the lower yield, but that yield will be compensated through these newer processing technology. Okay, so that is one more success mantra what they could achieve in Andhra Pradesh, right? So again, these are the 9 universally accepted natural farming principles. So among them, the 5th one is again very, very important. Okay, so I will be touching only the 5th principle. Okay, so I don't want to touch the remaining 8 principles of the natural farming, that is cultivation of diverse crops and trees. Okay, so they suggest that, so if you just cultivate, or if you succeed in placing the crops throughout the year. Okay, so that means what they suggest is, so the land or the soil should not be bare in any conditions throughout the year. Okay, so at least there should be one crop, okay, so in the soil, so that the field should not so get exposed directly to the sun. Okay, so as a result of the continuous coverage of the soil, so there will be buildup of lot of beneficial microbes and other soil arthropods. Okay, so these will take care of the nutrient requirement, and the cultivation of diverse crop will again attract many natural so population, so in the form of predators and parasites, and those will be sufficient to take care of the incidence of pest and diseases. Okay, so this is the claim. Okay, so what they so recommend in that particular report. Okay, so let us so study. Okay, so what is the diversification, as you all know, right? So diversification means, so we have to just replace. Okay, so any crops or cropping system which is not sustainable on a long run. Okay, so we have to so diversify or replace those crops having very low yield and low monetary benefits. Okay, so with a crop which actually fetches very high yield and high monetary returns. Okay, so this is how this crop diversification can be done. And again, this crop diversification depends on all these factors, right? So the region's geoclimatic conditions, socio-economic development and technological progress. Okay, so you cannot blindly go for diversifying the different crops and cropping systems across the location without its so testing on a large scale. Okay, so before its adoption, so you need to test. Okay, so whether this crop is coming up so in this particular locality or not. Okay, so that is the region's geoclimatic condition, right? Then socio-economic development, as you all know, so the Indian farmers, okay, so majority of them, so they are socially very weak, isn't it? Okay, so even though the climatic conditions are perfectly suitable for cultivation of different crops and adoption of cropping systems, but because of their poor economic situations, you cannot recommend. Okay, so even so then everything is perfect in that particular locality. So if the technologies are not so advanced, okay, so it may be the transport, processing, packaging. So if you want to introduce any crops, okay, so especially the perishable crops, so in those areas where there is not much so technologies, okay, so then we have to think it up twice or thrice. Okay, so this is how, so these factors actually decides the choice of crops and cropping systems to be diversified in different agroecological regions. So in the beginning I was talking about this. Okay, so how this crop diversification can be achieved. Okay, so it can be achieved through two ways: horizontal diversification, so it is nothing but so cultivation of many number of crops. Okay, so multiple crops or mix of different crops in a locality on the same piece of land in order to get so or in order to meet out so the family requirement. Okay, so in terms of the cereals, pulses, or even the forage requirement for the livestock populations, right? And next one is the vertical diversification. Okay, so in vertical diversification, apart from so putting multiple crops, okay, and cropping systems, so we have to attach, okay, so whatever the produce we are going to get under horizontal diversification to the industries. Okay, so industrialization is very, very important in vertical diversification, and today many of us are talking about this secondary agriculture. Okay, so we are not getting much benefit from the primary or the direct cultivation of crops and the livestock. So we are getting much benefit right now from the secondary agriculture in the form of the value addition, processing technology, packaging, isn't it? Okay, so we have to attach so the horizontal diversification with that to the industries, right? So through value addition we can so enhance the farmers' income. Okay, so this is how the crop diversification can be done. Then what is the reason? Okay, so why we need to diversify the different crops and cropping systems instead of going only from regionally dominant monocropping? Okay, so what are the main culprits or what are the reasons? Okay, so reasons for crop diversification. So as I said, so many times, so the natural resources, okay, so especially the soil and water, they are degrading at a faster rate, and if you continue the same management practices what we are adapting, okay, so till today in order to enhance the productivity of many of the crops, so if the trend continues for the next 10 or more years, okay, so our crop productivity may not be so the stable in a near future, okay. So just to protect the precious natural resources, we have to go for the diversification. Then, so because of change in climate, okay, so you just imagine, so this was a place earlier, so 20 or 25 years back, wherein, so we have a pleasant climate throughout the year, okay. So for all the 12 months, so you can stay here very comfortably here, but so even though I am coming from a very harsh climatic region, okay, so but right now I am feeling very uncomfortable here, okay. So you can imagine, so the rainfall pattern of the region, okay, so wherein, so this Malnad region, okay, so it has completely changed, right. And while coming from Kalburgi, in the morning, so I'm just looking, so the major condition in the farmer's field, it is completely dried. And many of the areca and cocoa bismillah orchards are also so in a pathetic situation. So they are all so not good. Okay, so what we used to see in so the last a decade or so, so that is not there right now. So the climate is changing, and due to change in the climatic conditions, whatever the quantity and quality of the produce, so what we are going to get in earlier days. Okay, so that is not happening right now. So decreasing employment, okay. So as you are again noticing this one, so migration, okay. So migration, especially the labor class, okay. So because of the unemployment, so especially in the agriculture, so every one of us are only concentrating towards this mechanization and partial mechanization, okay. So no one want to so keep the livestock either in the form of bullocks, so cows, or buffaloes, or any other so livestock. So we are depending only on the machines and mechanization, okay. So then where is the question of the employment opportunity, especially for the rural mass? So this is again a big question, okay. So we have to again so question ourselves, okay. So what type of modifications we want? So right now, then increasing the prices of the food commodity, okay. So that is also so one reason why we have to switch over to the crop diversification. Then decline productivity of this rice wheat, okay. So this is very, very important. So almost more than 10 or 13 million hectare area, okay. So it is under rice and wheat cropping system, right. And the productivity, okay, so it is almost a declined or so plateaued and theater, okay. So at a declining trend. So how best we can replace this rice wheat to the other profitable so alternate cropping pattern. Then decreased level of organic carbon, so because of the continuous cultivation of the monocropping, then due to the decrease in organic carbon content, so there is a deficiency of the nutrients, and decrease in income and purchasing power, okay. So this again herbicide resistant and development of resistant, so by the insect pest and some of the disease causing pathogens because of continuous usage of insecticides and the pesticides. Then what are the benefits, okay. So previously, so I have gone through so why the crop diversification is the need of our, and what benefits you are going to get out of the diversification, okay. So reduced the risk, okay. So even if one or two crop fails, okay, so the farmer will not be in a total loss, okay. So he will get the yield at least from one or fewer crops. Then we are going to create the employment, okay. So especially for the landless laborers, small farmers, so thereby we are creating the empowerment, so especially for the weaker section of our society, right. Then increase the income of the small farmers, right. Then we are getting the balanced diet, okay. So through the way of cultivating the different crops, okay. So cereals, pulses, oilseeds and vegetables, so no need to purchase it from the outside, okay. So the farmer, he can meet out the family requirement by cultivating the diverse crop on his farm itself, right. And as we are not depending only one or two crops, then there is no question of development of either herbicide resistant or the pesticide resistant pest or diseases, okay. So thereby we can alleviate or overcome such of the problems associated with the continuous usage of the agrochemicals, right. Then at the same time we are also going to preserve, okay, so our precious natural resources, thereby, so we are completely eliminating, okay, so the pollution, and again due to the diversification, so it also so helps to open the new agro-business opportunity for the farmers. Then key strategies, okay, so these are very, very important, okay, so even then, even though we are talking of the crop diversification, so is it acceptable for the farmers? That is the big question, okay. So whether the farmer, he listen you, so if you just go and say, so don't cultivate rice after rice in a irrigated command areas, so will he listen? No, isn't it, okay. So because no other crops, they are so getting him such a huge income, isn't it, okay. So then there are other socio-economic factors which are associated with the crops, okay, so which they used to cultivate in those regions, right. So there are many problems, okay, so you face, so if you just go, then invariably we have to include legumes, okay, so in natural farming, no, so as such we are not so recommending, okay, so any kind of this organic manures, even in the form of FIM compost or vermicompost, these are completely avoided or excluded. So here we are just enriching the soil through the crop residues and cultivation of different crops, thereby creating a congenial environment, okay, so wherein the microbes should survive in those conditions, and they will help to regulate the nutritional requirement for the different crops and cropping system, okay. So that is why, so invariably, okay, so leguminous crop should be the one of the options, either in a rotation or the intercrop or any other farm, in order to achieve the crop diversification. Then we have to replace the crops, okay, so which actually requires very huge fertilizers as well as the water exhaustive crops, okay. So with the low water required and low nutrient required crops, then under rain-fed situations, so practicing intercropping is again one more option available. Then don't neglect, okay, so the crops which are having their own importance, okay, so domestically, okay, so for the consumption of the local livelihoods, as well as, so try to give the scope for those crops which are having some export potentiality, okay. So this is also again very important. Then try to include the oil seeds, okay. So again the shortage of oil seed in our country is again one more major problem, okay. So every day, so we are consuming lot of oil, isn't it, okay. So we don't know from where it is coming, okay. So it is either from the vegetable source or so any other source, but so it is branded in the name of the sunflower refined oil or the soybean refined oil or any other brands, isn't it, okay. So we don't know exactly from where it is produced. So if you just look around the globe, okay, so what is the extent of area under these oil seeds, so whether the oil seeds that we are going to produce are right now we are getting, so that is sufficient to feed, sufficient to produce this much of the oil. So this is again a big question, so on everyone, right. So we have to question ourselves, okay, so whatever we are consuming, so that is so coming from the original, so vegetables cultivated so in the form of oil seeds or not, okay. So that is, so again there is plenty of scope for the oil seeds as well as legumes, okay. So either in the rotation, intercrops under the rain-fed conditions, and adopting the cropping system which is more productive, profitable and sustainable on a long run, okay. So this is so very, very important. Yes. So actually I will give here a small example, ma'am. So just I am coming from the Kalburgi, wherein the pigeon pea is the major crop there. So locally they will cultivate the pigeon pea variety Beunur local or Gullal local. That is the local variety spread among the farmers. So instead of that, So if you introduce a high yielding variety, what we have released from own research, so TS3R or GRG811, so any improved variety, okay, so that is almost similar to their local variety, but so they have some added advantage, okay. So pest resistant, sorry, not pest resistance, they are somewhat resistant to wilt disease, so somewhat tolerable to sterility mosaic disease, and whatever the local varieties they used to cultivate, those are all highly susceptible for this wilt and sterility mosaic diseases also, okay. So such of the small intervention we have to tell them, okay. So this is how we can replace a very low yielding crops to the high yielding crops in terms of replacement with respect to the varieties. So as you said, na, so the rightly pointed out, so natural farming means, so they are stressing more on the local seeds and the varieties, okay. So any crops or varieties having the local seeds. So this is how, okay. So local vocalu agirbeku, so kadimeinda jaasti iluvarinu bandirbeku, okay. So we have to intervene like this. So but as you said, so there is no scope at all for high yielding hybrids and so this GMOs under natural farming, okay. So even though, so after conversion of around 3 years, so they will become this organic or natural, but because of their very huge demand with respect to nutrients as well as the water requirement, so try to just avoid or exclude such of the interventions. So this why this crop diversification, especially in the north, okay. So immediately after harvesting, in the month of the October and November, so if you just visit any North Indian states, so this is the big issue, okay. So after harvesting of the paddy, so there invariably they go for burning of the paddy residues, okay. And you know what are the ill effects of the paddy residues and what kind of the smoke or fog, so they are going to face, okay. And because of that, so what are all the side effects, okay. So because of this, so this Indo-Gangetic belt, so especially the regions where the green revolution was witnessed for the first time, right. So Punjab, Haryana and eastern Uttar Pradesh, so these 3 states, they are always in the news, okay. So in the months of October and November, so that is preferably after harvesting of the paddy crop, right. So even though we are suggesting them, okay, so just to replace these crops or cropping system with other, but because of the certain or several advantages associated with those crops and the status of those crops in those states, so they are unable to switch over to other crops and cropping system, okay. So even though the Punjab is a very smallest state, okay, so having only 1.53% of the country's area under agriculture, but you just look at their contribution towards rice and wheat, right. So 29% of the wheat and 38% of the wheat is coming from only this small patch of the area, okay. And if you just tell them, so completely replace this cropping system, so what could be the fate in future, okay. So that also we have to take into account. And Punjab, okay, so this is the 3rd largest crop producing state, so in terms of the paddy, and Haryana, okay, so this is one more state, and this is considered as the bread basket and rice bowl of India, right. So contributing around 45% of the rice and 65% of the wheat to the so central food grain production, right. And again, why this paddy wheat or paddy is dominant in these 3 states is mainly because, yes. I will come to that point. Yes, yes, ma'am. So I am giving only the classical examples, ma'am. I will come in subsequent slides there. So why this paddy is prevalent in these states, okay. So because of the several advantages associated with this particular system, as I said, so the green revolution was witnessed in these 3 states, and whatever the profits they are going to get out of these cropping systems, they are more profitable, and we cannot replace these crop with the other. And because of the government intervention in the form of the minimum support price and other, so the farmers of those states are getting the better income. Then lack of awareness, okay, so especially, so they don't have the much knowledge about the crop diversification, okay, so which is the best alternative crop instead of paddy wheat to replace these two crop. So what should I grow? Okay, so that is also one more researchable issues, and very few human resources. Okay, so very few scientists, so they are working on this particular aspect, and availability of the cheaper services. Okay, so they are getting so this power, water, and other inputs at a cheaper rate. And so why it is significant? So as madam said, I don't want to go it again. And what are the challenges before us? Okay, so in crop diversification, so what we should go for this one. So these are all the strategies, and these are some of the attempts, okay, so made by the central government as well as the respective state government in order to diversify the different crops and cropping systems in the country as well as so in different states. Okay, so the first committee was formulated. So Joel committee, okay, so it was again recommended, so at least 20% of the rice and wheat area, especially in Punjab, should be replaced with the other crops. Okay, so this is the recommendation of this committee. And Ashok Dalwai committee, okay, so this is one more committee on doubling the farmers' income. Okay, so this also insisted, okay, so the respective state government that so at least so some area, okay, so especially the area under the cereal crop should be replaced with the high value crop, so that the farmers income can be doubled through the crop diversification. Okay, so this is one more recommendation. And again this CDP crop diversification program, which was again started during so 13-14 also, so suggested diversification of 5% of the paddy area in UP, Haryana and Punjab to alternate crops. Okay, so cereals, pulses, so then oil seeds and other crops. And recently only, okay, so in the state budget, the Punjab government, so they have so devoted around 1,000 crore rupees, okay, so for implementing this crop diversification in their state. Okay, so how best we can replace paddy or paddy wheat cropping system. And again the NFSM, every one of us know, so this through this program also, so the for respective state government, okay, so they need to just diversify, okay, so the crops in the form of pulses, so cereals, millets and all. And one more program is MIDH, Mission on Integrated Development of Horticulture. So through this program also, so there is scope, okay, so scope to include these crops, vegetables, fruits, roots, tuber crops, so that we can achieve the crop diversification. So these are some of the case studies, okay, so that are so available. So through literature I have so try to pull, okay, so some of the references made under natural farming practices under so different crops and cropping systems. So this is the impact of natural farming system on rural household. So evidence from Solan districts of Himachal Pradesh. Okay, so these are the season wise vegetables and cereals, pulses and oilseeds grown under the conventional farming. And this is the crops and cropping systems adopted under the natural farming systems. Okay, so through crop diversification, so how best we can increase the total income of the farm. So then how we can so reduce the total cost required to raise the different crops. Okay, so compared to the previous, no, so this one, so they got much benefit from the vegetable based so diversified cropping system in the Himachal Pradesh. Okay, so these are the findings. Okay, so findings of the study. So maximum land use was achieved, and so yield losses were minimum under natural farming. So if you just go for vegetable based crop diversification, and net returns and reduced cost of cultivation can also be achieved. Okay, so in natural farming, if you go for the diversification of different crops and cropping system, so this reduced cost of cultivation is through saving in the cost of cultivation. So especially from the agrochemicals in the form of fertilizers and pesticides. So this is one more study. Okay, so how we can convince the farmer. Okay, so instead of rice and wheat, so which are all the alternate crop for their locality. Okay, so continuous cultivation of rice or only rice during kharif and summer, okay. So if you just go for these cropping system, paddy, mustard, peppermint, right, or paddy, potato, peppermint in the Uttar Pradesh, okay. So eastern UP is one more so state having lot of area under rice and wheat. So instead of only rice, wheat or rice, these are the potential one, okay. So they can replace so those traditional so non-profitable cropping systems with these crops and cropping patterns. And again this peppermint, okay, so some of the horticulturists, they know it very well, okay. So what are the advantages of including this peppermint under this cropping system? And this is one more study from South Gujarat, okay. So the best alternative to rice wheat is rice, fenugreek, okra, rice, onion, cowpea, okay. So from these cropping systems, they are getting these benefits, okay. So these are different indices, okay. So actually worked out so agronomically, so to test so whether the existing cropping system is superior or inferior over the existing one, okay. So system productivity, sustainable yield index, then production efficiency, field water use efficiency, monetary production efficiency, net rupee per rupee invested, okay. So this is how so we can replace. And this is from Bihar. So instead of rice and wheat, so the second and third one so cropping systems are more profitable in terms of all these indices, okay. So apart from getting the land use, better land use efficiency and production efficiencies, so you can also enhance the soil fertility through so enhancement in the soil microbial biota, okay. So bacterial, then fungal population, and then some of the enzyme activity, right. And this is the NARM report, okay. So what I was talking in the beginning, no. So they have not conducted any kind of the trials or research, okay. So they surveyed the 3 states, so Andhra Pradesh, Karnataka and Maharashtra, and they critically analyzed, okay. So the production practices followed by the natural farming so farmers, and they have given the conclusion, okay. So among the different crops they have surveyed, paddy, sugarcane, cotton, soybean, turmeric, jowar. So the extent of yield reduction is between 15 to 30%, okay. And they have got only the positive yield trend only in case of ragi, finger millet, okay. So this was the conclusive report of this NARM, okay. So this is available in the NARM so website. So it is very less nutrient required crops, so absolutely devoid of pest and diseases, not much care is required to raise. And I will also share my experience, okay. So in the future slides, so wherein we have conducted so this natural farming so trials and the dominant crop of the regions, okay. So zone 2, okay. So Karnataka, it is having around 10 agroclimatic zones, and from government of Karnataka they have funded the natural farming project. So just to so validate so the natural farming practices, organic farming practices, then the respective university recommended the package and practice over the farmers practice, okay. So many of my previous speakers may also have given the information on these different types of the treatments tested on different crops in different localities, okay. So I will share my experience there also. And this is so one of the review what I got so Australia, okay. So if you just go for the crop diversification, so how best we can regulate the soil microbial diversity, okay. So in natural farming, no, so the main source, okay, so to feed the crop plant is through the residue incorporation and retention of residues in the form of the mulches, okay. So upon decomposition of these through the activity of microbes, so later on you can expect the better release of nutrients from those residues, okay. So that means if you just cover the soil, okay, so that means if you don't leave the soil bare, okay, so then that is more than sufficient to activate the microbes in the soil. In turn, these microbes will enhance the soil fertility naturally, okay. So that was one more concept of the natural farming. So these are the crops, okay. So what we have conducted, so the natural farming so practice validation. So bajra groundnut cropping system, so 4 years we have tested it. then sunflower chickpea, so then sol pigeon pea, rabi sorghum, pigeon pea groundnut intercropping, maize followed by chickpea, then pigeon pea green gram intercropping system, and paddy cropping systems. Okay, so these are the 11 natural farming experiments conducted at zone 2, so in 4 different research stations, right. So this is the general view of the different crops under 4 different treatments: natural farming, organic farming, then recommended package of practice and farmers practice. Okay, so this is the bird so view of the different cropping pattern, so at US Raichur, and these are the 4 treatments so commonly followed at all the 10 zones, and this is the abstract. Okay, so you just look at the pearl millet. The extent of adoption of this natural farming practices in pearl millet, so recorded around 6 to 9% yield reduction in 4 different years of experimentation. Okay, so that means, so even if you practice it so continuously for about 4 years, even then there will be yield reduction, and in rabi sorghum it is 13 to 22%, and you just look the maize crop. Okay, so it is highly nutrient exhaustive and water requirement crop. You just imagine if you follow the natural farming practices in crops like this, so you cannot achieve. Okay, so its potentiality. Okay, so the extent of yield reduction is very, very high, so even 52%. Then paddy it is 16 to 36%, pigeon pea it is 24 to 31%, green gram, chickpea, sunflower and groundnut. So the red marked this one. Okay, so values so those the extent of yield reduction is more than 20%, and so the crops wherein the yield reduction is less than 20%, no, pearl millet, rabi sorghum and chickpea. So such of the crops so we can recommend. Okay, so for the cultivation under the natural farming practices. Okay, so not the crops so whose yield reduction is very high, right. And I will share one more experience here. The extent of yield reduction in some of the crops like the pulses. Okay, so you know it very well. Okay, so pulses, they are the less nutrient required or less so manuring crops, doesn't need much of the nutrients, right. So even though we can meet out their nutrient requirement through mulches or through bijamrita or jivamrita, ghana jivamrita, or so continuous application of this jivamrita, but managing pests and diseases is a very tough challenge in the pulses. Okay, so you cannot completely manage the pest and diseases so through the different astras or any other botanicals. Okay, so that is the major bottleneck, or you can say the drawback, right. So otherwise, so nutritionally, so they are not so nutrient exhaustive crop, so you can take up their cultivation, but under the low disease and pest load situations you can take up the pulses also, right. And these are some of the microbial activity. Okay, so organic farming practice followed by the natural farming practices, so they recorded the better microbial load, so total bacteria, fungal, actinomycetes and some of the so enzyme activity, so they are all more in organic farming practices then followed by the natural farming practices. And this is the overall gist of the soil physico-chemical properties. Okay, so how the soil physico-chemical properties, so they actually changes under the different production methods. Okay, so invariably, so the organic farming followed by the natural farming practices are so better with respect to so enhancement of the organic carbon content, improvement in the soil physical properties. But if you just say the availability of the nutrients, okay, so major micronutrients, so the availability is very less under natural farming practices, and it is better in the recommended package of practice. So these are the crop stand. Okay, so how the different crops we have taken under the natural farming, so and different other production methods. Okay, so pearl millet, so groundnut, sunflower, chickpea, then green gram, rabi sorghum, pigeon pea green gram, then pigeon pea groundnut and paddy cropping system. And these are some of the case studies. Okay, so the farmers were getting are harvesting the better benefits from practicing the natural farming through crop diversification. Okay, so instead of cultivating or concentrating only on one crop, so how best we can have the better benefit from the crop diversification. Okay, so this is a case study from Mandya. So a farmer having only 2 acres, how he is earning the regular income through the crop intensification. So this is one more farmer from Tumkur, right? So this is from the Parbhani, Maharashtra, right? So at the last, I can conclude that, so even though, okay, so we recommend, so the crop diversification or the intercropping or crop rotation is the key component, okay, so in natural farming system to have the better sustainability. You just see the figures, okay. So in spite of our recommendation, okay, so what percent of the farmers they are following the crop diversification in different states, okay. So it is only 29% in Andhra Pradesh, 45% in Karnataka and 17% in the Maharashtra. So this is the survey report, so done by the NAR, okay, so Hyderabad. So that means the extent of the crop diversification followed by the Karnataka farmers are much better than our neighboring states, that is Andhra Pradesh and the Maharashtra. And at the last, I may conclude that, so in long range, okay, so if you follow or if at all you want to adopt this natural farming practices, so continuously, so by adopting only one or two crops, or you can say the monocropping system, so it leads to drastic reduction in the soil fertility through so exploitation of different nutrients. If at all you want to maintain the sustainability in the productivity levels of different crops and cropping system, so I must say that, so diversification is the need of the hour, okay. So don't depend only on the monocropping, okay. So we have to diversify the crop, and without the scientific background or the scientific evidences, okay. So if you design a different crop or cropping pattern, okay, so which is economically profitable, having more sustainable, so without its testing on a long, so this one over the location, so don't recommend it, okay. So without so much scientific evidences, right? And if you do these two, so definitely I can say the crop diversification is always a win-win situation, even under any adverse situations, okay. So this is what so I wanted to convey in today's talk. If you have any doubts, so you are most welcome. So bore ಆಯ್ತು ಅಂತ ಅನ್ಕೊಂತೀನಲ್ವಾ? Yes.
So government of Karnataka, you have already conducted research for 4 years. You know it in able to study. So what are the recommendations that you would suggest to the youth?
Yes, ma'am. So actually there was one state level workshop held at US Harvard in the month of March. So there we have presented the results of all the crops, so where we have conducted these natural farming experiments in all the zones. So we have also given the zonal wise recommendation, and I can say, so none of the zones among the 10 agricultural zones, so they are able to convince, they are able to say, so this particular crop or cropping system can be adapted under the natural farming in spite of conducting the research for about 4 years. Okay, so no crops and cropping system are sustainable, or we can recommend under natural farming. That was the conclusion.
Yesterday we have visited some small companies. They said that after 5 to 6 years, later we are going to visit their own years.
So in research stations, no? So across the zones, in all the 10 agricultural zones, so none of us are able to get the positive yield rate. Okay, so that was the conclusion made at national level, state level workshop at US. Okay, so from those zones, so in even a single person, okay, so because this drug can be cultivated under natural farming. Okay, so if you practice this continuously for about 3 or 4 years, okay, so that was so almost incomplete conclusion. And if you continue the same kind of so experiment, okay, so one more lacuna what we observed in natural farming is, so whatever the protocol they have given us, okay, so we have followed that much of method, okay. So only Vijayamrita, so occupation of Jivamrita at 15 days interval, Dhana Jivamrita at the time of sowing, and managing pest and diseases as and when they appear to different across the water meters. Okay, so we followed this much of practices. So other than these, we have to refine. Okay? So apart from this retaining the residues or application of Jivamrita, so if you add some more practices like addition of compost, vermicompost or FYM, or finally refinement of technologies. Okay? So using some bios. Okay? So instead of depending only on the plant extract or different astras, okay? How best we can use these bios to manage the pest and diseases. Okay? So if you do so those practices or include those practices, so we may get the better.
That integrated natural farming, that last treatment they included methods, that may be better than what
Yes, madam. Yes, yes. So actually, over and above natural farming, so whatever the components that are missing in the natural farming, those are all actually the organic, and that particular practice was done only at zone 3. So Dr. Babilal sir. So over and above this natural farming, so they use some additional this one to supplement so the nutrients and to manage or curb the incidence of pest and disease. And they got the better result compared to only organic and only natural farming. So that is the intensified natural farming. Okay, so that the particular practice was done only at zone 3, but remaining rest of the zone 9, they have not practiced. So as you said, so if you just impose the extended natural farming practices, so combining so some of the missing components in natural farming, so definitely we can get the better yield and third or fourth year effects.
So in zone 2, the rice is rice
Yes.
there it is economical viable.
So same method, the extent of introduction is 32 to almost 39%. So it is not at all a viable option. So we cannot go for natural farming in such a cropping system where we need to impose very high dose of nutrients, and plant protection is also one of the big issue there. So we cannot impose. I impose if I to go for cultivation of rice in the natural farming system.
Sir, one question. As you told that state level workshop was held at Lava,
Yes.
who are the higher officials at board of government?
So actually official from the state government, so additional director of agriculture was there. So then vice chancellor of few universities and director of research of all the 4 universities were there.
Whether the proceedings has been drawn
Yes,
with respect to results outcome of
yes,
all the
proceedings of the meeting has already been done and the same has been submitted to the state government also. If you want that particular
No, my question is different. I'm just asking the
Yes.
one. Because I'm the one of the person from the KVK.
okay.
As you told now, in the second slide or third slide itself, you told that without any scientific evidence or validation,
Yes.
we should not go for outscaling.
Yes.
Because ours is the one of the KVK and this is the year. Among 425 KVK selected for national level outscaling of national farming project. Because you being a research scientist in the university itself, telling that this much introduction is there. But in our case, maybe other KVKs or other states will also get this one. If farmer comes forward, that's a different issue.
Yes.
And if I have to convince, without any strong backup of the
Yes,
scientific
sir.
evidence, how I can able to convince? And knowing the fact that this much introduction is going to be there, because till now we are going to, because I am a public person, I am a government servant. If somebody, some farmer asks, you have been told that by following natural farming for 3 years, this is going to be improved, that is going to be improved. After 3 years, if he comes back to me, what is my solution?
So before convincing, so we have to tell him that one should not hide anything, no?
Yes,
So
because I already received a mail. I am getting call from a head. Manage is going to conduct a workshop from 15 to 17. They are compiling natural farming success stories,
Yes.
and they are providing to and fro airfare to the participant, the KVK scientist and the farmer. We have to take the farmer to to that workshop, and he has to present the success story, and they will combine the success story, and they are presenting at the national workshop. It is going to be done in the
I received the mail yesterday only from Andy.
only last year they are given the amount, and they are told that we don't ask any success stories, just create the awareness. Now they are already asking success stories, where to create success stories, and this is the result, research results.
So whatever we got in our experiment, that recommendation I just so that's it. And same recommendation holds good from almost every agrochemical zone of.
Why I am asking this question? University scientists are not telling like this only.
Okay.
Because results are like this. But ICR people from the central government, they are pushing, go to the farmers field.
But if you just search some of the references, no? So there are plenty of success stories from the Andhra Pradesh. So they are claiming that we can get yield advantage in many of the crops, including paddy in the second year onwards only. Okay, so such of the reports also available in the website. Okay, so we cannot do everything. So what is truth? So that they have to stick on. That is the only worry, right? Except Nagpur and India. That is the problem. So no one is accepting.
No, sir.
So this is the truth.
As I told, previous 2-3 years, during KVK, they asked the success stories for doubling the farmers. That was also a headache for the scientists. Cannot make the farmers in that situation.
So not only for the KV case, so when we are implementing this project at state level, no? So state level was also asking us, so kindly furnish the success stories of the farmer, at least 10 farmers from each district. Okay, so where we have to search, so that is the difficulty. Okay, so whatever we got, so through interviews and through the field visits, we have provided that much of information to the state. Okay, this very reality is different, and whatever they are giving the show of
Yes,
is
that is different.
anything else? Okay, thank you.
On behalf of KSNUAHS and participants, I extend heartfelt thanks to the Dr. Pandit sir in giving the entirely concentrated on the crop diversification and farming system in natural farming.
Pandit,
Yes, sir.
so maybe since yesterday or since the second day of our training program, we are all seeing the results of natural farming experiments across the zones. So when we presented the same in the Dharwad workshop, the decision was not to promote natural farming or not to exclusively go for organic farming. What the suggestion made was integration of the best practices of natural as well as organic farming, that is to be promoted to the farmers field. So that's what we did in this project work. Actually, when this project was started, as agronomists, we were also not ready to take up this project. In fact, I am telling you, but we were forced to do this work. But systematically, we did this experiments on natural farming in all the zones, almost for 3 years on the same field, on the permanent plot basis. Only few crops, maybe pulses or short duration leguminous crops, they perform better. That too, wherever soil is, native soil itself is very fertile, and under those situations we got some good results. But under exhaustive cropping system, it will never come up to the level of our what is the package practice or conventional practices what we are noticing. But somewhere we are seeing some improvement in the microbial activity and enzymatic activity. Whatever may be the improvement in the microbial load or enzymatic activity, that may not suffice the nutrient requirement of the crop until and unless we provide the nutrients from the external source, whatever the plant crop requirement of the nutrient that cannot be totally met out by the whatever may be the improvement in the microbial load or enzymatic activity. That's what we observed. But that is not required for our farmer. He doesn't bother about what happens to my soil and other things. Ultimately, he needs money for whatever the investment he has made. So, to address these problems only, we also came to a conclusion that best practices of natural and organic farming practices are to be promoted to the farmers' field. That was our conclusion. I don't know what the decision will be taken up at the highest level. And it is too early to take up large-scale demonstrations in the farmers' field also, even through KVKs. If at all, if you want to make any demonstrations or any trials, my request is to take on a only smaller area, so that if farmers doesn't get the expected yield level, he should not lose much of his income. That is my request to all of you. Whatever you want to take, you take it on a small scale. That's what is our suggestion. If a farmer is having 2 acres of land, advise him to take these sort of practices in a quarter acre or half an acre of his land. Once it is convinced, then he can establish on a larger area. That is what is our observation, Rathod, if you agree with me. Yes. So with this, I will thank Dr. Pandit Rathod for having come from faraway places like Gulbarga to here. And I think day after day you are also getting some clarifications about natural farming practices and the results what you are seeing. So thank you very much for providing valuable information to all our participants. And all our participants are very enthusiastic and very alert in the class. So on behalf of the participants also, I am thankful to you. Thank you. So now we will break for lunch. And after the break, we will have one class on non-chemical methods of pest and disease. Again, we are talking about nutrient management alone and soil improvement, soil health improvement. But when it comes to pest and disease management under natural farming, is a bit difficult task. So how best or to what extent we can control the diseases by adopting the natural farming practices. That's what the topic is to be discussed in the afternoon class by Dr. Sunil Dukar. He comes from Either Zone 1. Thank you. Today there is no cricket match.